Om Jnanantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. So we want to cover chapter 13 today. Ideally the whole chapter, but let's see how far we get. So in the first, as you know, Bhagavad-Gita has 18 chapters. So it can be divided into 3 sections. The first 6 chapters, the middle 6 chapters, and the last 6 chapters. By predominance of topic, the first 6 chapters deals with the subject matter of karma yoga. So that first section is basically called as karma, because the predominance of topic is Krishna's advocacy for the application of the karma yoga sadhana or practice for realizing the self, basically. And he speaks about karma yoga in contradistinction with other paths, such as the Gyan yoga path and Ashtanga yoga path. So you learn about those paths also in the first 6 chapters, but the main thrust is this karma yoga subject matter. He ends the first 6 chapters with a... Okay, sure. Thank you. Jai. Is it? Sorry, online people are getting a little adjustment here at this table. It's a cute little table. If it works. Okay, it looks okay. Thank you. So Krishna ends the first 6 chapters with an advocacy of becoming a yogi. And then he says of all yogis, the best yogi is the devotee. Magate nataratmana shadavam bhajate yomam same yuktatamamata. He whose inner self always abides in me with great faith worships me. Same yuktatama. He is the yuktatama, the superlatively linked with me in yoga. That is my opinion. Krishna says that. So later on, we find out that he's God, so his opinion counts for a lot. In the middle 6 chapters, having ended the first 6 chapters with this advocacy for basically being a devotee, he shifts gears in the middle 6 chapters by discussing himself as a supreme being of everything and his relationship with this world and the importance of the application of bhakti yoga. That was the main discourse of the middle 6 chapters, which is known as the bhakti section of Bhagavad-Gita. So in the last 6 chapters, and that he concludes in the last chapter that of all sorts of practices, bhakti is the best practice for gaining connection with the absolute reality. Arjuna specifically asks, of your devotee or those who follow the other paths of jnana, which one do you consider to be the superlative knower of yoga? Yoga vit tama. The word tama means topmost. Vit, knower. Yoga Vittama. Who is the topmost knower of yoga? Krishna says his devotee. So the rest of the chapter discusses why he thinks that. It discusses different degrees of application of bhakti, and then he concludes with a list of qualities of his devotees by which they become very dear to him. So it is very clear in the middle 6 chapters that he's advocating for bhakti yoga. So the last 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, it's known, the section itself, the last 6 chapters is known as the Gyan section of Bhagavad Gita. So in that section, you don't have like a clear trajectory of discourse as you do in the first 2 sections. And the first section is like a clear trajectory, karma yoga. And the second section is a clear trajectory, bhakti yoga. And the last 6 chapters is not that sort of continuity of discussion that you encounter in the first 2 sections, but rather each chapter of the last 6 sections kind of gives auxiliary information of things that we've already heard. And therefore, in one sense, each chapter can kind of exist by itself as providing just auxiliary information. What's the word I'm looking for? Like kind of fluffing it out? That doesn't sound eloquent, fluffing it out. Fleshing it out. I guess that's what we say in the States, right? That sounds not poetic. Anyway, fleshing it out, the subject matters that we've encountered. Elaborate, that's a better word. It sounds a little bit more educated. Yeah, elaborating on the philosophy that we've encountered in the first 2 chapters or first 2 sections of Bhagavad Gita. For example, in chapter 13, which is the chapter we'll try to cover today, Krishna kind of focuses on the difference between matter and spirit, the soul and matter. Now, earlier in the first 6 chapters, Krishna only dedicated a small section to that discussion. Chapter 2, verses 11 through 30, we hear about the distinction between the soul and the body. And then that was it. And then the rest of it was just like karma yoga and Jnana yoga and Ashtanga yoga for realizing that. He doesn't go into much detail there. Later in the middle 6 chapters, we learned that the soul is one type of energy of Krishna and matter is another type of energy of Krishna. And 2 verses, 7, 4, and 5. The soul is the superior prakriti. You may remember this language. And the matter is the apara prakriti, the inferior prakriti of the Lord. And that was it. That was all Krishna discusses on that distinction. But the distinction between matter and spirit is like a super important point, one that is kind of the starting point of spiritual philosophy. But Krishna kind of just glosses it in chapter 2, 11 through 30, and verses 7, 4, and 5. It's like he doesn't elaborate on it very much, even though it's kind of an important subject matter. I have a speculation about that, probably because that was just like basic cultural knowledge. So there was no need for super elaboration on it. Like Krishna could just bring up the point and go into the main thing he wants to discuss, because everyone was kind of trained in this sort of basic understanding of the difference between the self and matter. Like Prabhupada would sometimes say like this also in India, he said even a child knows about reincarnation and knows that the soul is different from matter. He said even a child knows that, but here even the most educated person in the West doesn't know this distinction. He would kind of be poking fun of Western intellectuals that didn't know this. So I suspect that Krishna didn't feel the need to really elaborate on those points and the outset of his discussion, because that was just like standard understanding of training. But now in the last 6 chapters, he wants to provide auxiliary information that he didn't really touch on in detail. Another example is in chapter 14, it's called the Gunas, Tri Guna Vibhaga Yoga, where Krishna talks about the gunas of nature, how they bind, how they influence the different results of work done in different gunas. He elaborates on a subject matter. Now, throughout the first wave and second wave discourse of Gita, we heard about the gunas, but Krishna never elaborated on them. So in chapter 14, he gives more of an elaboration. So in this way, you'll see each chapter in the last section of the Bhagavad-Gita is providing auxiliary information of things that we've encountered earlier. And kind of ties together a lot of the themes that we heard earlier and just, makes them stronger. Some of the conclusions reached in those first sections. So for this reason, the last 6 chapters of Gita is known as the Gyan section of Bhagavad-Gita. Okay, is everything clear? I mentioned it, it's okay. So, chapter 13, Krishna focuses on the difference between matter and spirit, consciousness and material nature, also known as, well, we'll see. It has a few terms that we encounter in this section. So I didn't have my whiteboard. I really wanted a whiteboard, but it was left in the yoga or in the 5th floor, and they're doing a yoga class in there, and it had already started, so I couldn't bust in there and just take it. So that's why I need you to use your phones, because we're going to do some reading today. So the chapter opens up, well, not in all editions of Bhagavad Gita, but in Bhagavad Gita as it is, at least the chapter opens up with Arjuna asking 6 questions. So, and the rest of the chapter is Krishna giving an answer more or less to these 6 questions. So verse 1 is Arjuna's 6 questions. He asks, what is Kshetra? And Kshetra means the field of activity. And what or who is Kshetra Gya? Kshetra Gya means the knower of the field of activity. These are the first 2 questions. Second 2 questions, what is Jnana? Jnana means knowledge, or the process of education by which one comes to higher realizations of things. And what or who is Gaya? Gaya means that which is to be known through the process of knowledge. And then he asks last 2 questions. What is Prakriti? And what is Purusha? So 6 questions are there. You got 6 questions? Do you have 6 questions in there? Where are the 6 questions? You remember the 6 questions?
The first 2 are what is
Kshetra. Kshetra Gya. Kshetra Gya. Gya, like Jnana, Gya. So Kshetra Gya, the knower of the Kshetra. Those are the first 2.
The second one, yeah. And then the next 2 were what is Jnana? what is knowledge, and then through that knowledge, what is it that we
It's to be known. That is called Gaya.
That's called?
Gaya. And last two
I
questions.
missed the last two.
Okay. What is Prakriti and what is Purusha?
What is
Prakriti means material nature, basically, and Purusha is another term for the soul. You understand? So that was the first question. So in verse 2 through 7, Krishna answers the first two questions. So you want to write this down because you will have to do reading now after this. Because now I will give some questions. Well, actually, I would ask you to give the answer to these questions, but you have to read the Bhagavad-Gita in order to do that. So first verse is the questions themselves, 6 of them. Then in verses 2 through 7, Krishna is answering the first two questions. What are the first two questions? And? Yes. So in verses 8 through 12, Krishna answers the third question about what is Jnana. And verse 8 through 12. What is Jnana? Understand. And then in 13, verses 13 through 19, Krishna answers the next question, what is Gaya? Actually, it's really 13 through 18, and then verse 19 kind of gives a conclusion about those who know these 4 topics, then what will be the result of that. Then in verses 20 through 24, Krishna answers last set of questions, which is?
What is Prakriti and the material unconsciousness?
Yeah, what is Prakriti, what is Purusha? So he answers those last 2 questions in verses 20 through 24. Verses 20 to 23, he kind of answers the question. And in verse 24, he kind of gives a conclusion about knowing that subject matter. And verses 25 through, I think 25 and 26, Krishna mentions different sadhanas for realizing these subject matters. So first you get the theoretical knowledge, then you need some process for realizing. So he mentions that in verses 25 and 26. He mentions 4 processes in those 2 verses. And then in verses 27 to the end of the chapter, which I think is verse 35, Krishna concludes by talking about the perception of those who realize that knowledge. You can call them like seers. How do those who realize this knowledge, how do they see things, or what is their vision? So in the last part of the chapter, verses 27 through end of the chapter, I think there's 35 verses. Krishna answering that particular question. Yes, 35. You understand? How is the chapter divided? You have everything clear? Everything's clear? I need a yes, and then I'll give you the reading assignment now. So you clear? Clear. No, you're clear. I know you're clear. Minna's clear. You're clear?
I think so.
You're clear?
Yeah, kind of clear. I'll be honest, I'm not read the Gita yet. Well, I read it a long time ago, so I'm kind of...
No, that's okay. You can read now. For this class, even if this is your first class, you can just now read this particular chapter. So now I want you to answer the questions. So how many questions are there?
6.
6 questions.
6?
There are 6 questions, yes. What is 6? What is Kshetra? And Kshetra Gya?
What is Gyan? What is Gaya?
Yeah, Gaya.
What is Prakriti and Purusha?
Yeah, 6 questions. Now you see where the answer is. So I've given you how the chapter is broken down, where Krishna is answering these questions. So now you can take 10, 15 minutes. Or you guys can even work together as a group. There's only a few of you here today. So you can work together as a group also, but you have to write it down yourself. You can't just depend on someone else's notes or one person marks it down for the whole group. And you answer these questions as Krishna is answering them. So you just read the chapter, and you don't have to read the commentaries. Don't go into the commentaries. Just see how much you can get out of the verses themselves, knowing that this is what's being discussed in those particular sections. Does it make sense? Question?
Yes.
Yes.
So you basically read chapter 30.
Yes.
Or 15 minutes.
10, 15 minutes,
15
yeah.
minutes, and then answer these questions.
Yeah, that's what you're going to be doing when you're reading it. So you're going to be answering the questions, like reading, okay, this is answering that.
Gotcha.
And then at the end, we'll discuss it at the end together. We'll see what answers we got and how, if it was clear or not. Okay? So you can work together. So there's no,
Test.
It's not like a test. It's more like a class
It's
assignment.
interesting, definitely.
To get you engaged with reading the Bhagavad Gita for yourself. Otherwise, you will hear me speak and you'll not read Bhagavad Gita. So you guys can work together 10, 15 minutes. Sorry for online people, you cannot participate in this little exercise. You can do it also from online. And you can type in your answers on the chat box if you like, if you're going to stay on. Otherwise, we will take now 10, 15 minutes. You answer these questions the best you can, looking at the verses of Bhagavad Gita.
Do you want to read?
Yes, I need to read this. I don't have
I think we'll get one more thing.
Yeah, you guys can work together. Y'all can work as one group, or you can split into two, and just try to do. Yeah. Yeah, you can read on your
I
phone.
use as it is. As it is.
Let me just share it next to you.
I have two Gitas here.
Oh, good.
Oh, right.
That's chapter 14.
13.
Chapter
13.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Chapter 13. Nature and enjoyer consciousness.
Yes. All right. Sorry, online people. This little break in the discussion. And I'll also do some walk. Don't be shy to talk to each other. Chapter 4, chapter 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Do this one over. How's it going?
It's okay.
I have so many more questions already. I know I'm supposed to answer, but I have more questions.
Okay, it wasn't meant to be like an exhaustive, like you're trying to find every single detail or something like that. But
Makes me think that I should actually take the time to sit through and read all the reports because
this
it's
particular,
super interesting.
it is interesting. We'll make a little pause here. 7:30. I think it's about 15 minutes. So how did it go? How far did you get?
30, almost 32.
Okay. How far did
32.
Okay.
33.
Okay.
26.
26. Okay. All right, let's get through. Let's get to it. So the first two questions. What is a kshetra? Did you note it down? The kshetra is the material body.
Like all the important things, like mind intelligence.
Yes, the different aspects of the material body: mind, intelligence, chitta, senses, etc. Right. And kshetragya,
Soul and super soul.
the soul and the super soul. The soul and the super soul are called as the knowers. And that which is aware of this body, that which is not this body but is aware of this body is called as the knower of the body. And that knower is two, the soul and also the super soul. Right.
What's the difference? I know super soul is Krishna.
Yes.
So soul is basically how I perceive myself to be. Is that what it is?
No, the soul is the witness of the material body. And the super soul is also the witness of the material body. The difference between the two is that he is the knower of all the material bodies, whereas you are only the knower of your particular body. So that soul is like now, your soul is looking at your body and your mind. I often get this exercise, but when you sleep, this particular body and mind, as you know it, may cease to exist, right? When you sleep, you may dream of being a bird or something like that. So you cease to exist as Minna, and now you're some bird in the sky. So whatever you are in your waking life cease to exist, and you become something else in your dream life. And then when you wake up from your dream life, then whatever you were in that dream world cease to exist, and you're back into this particular. So the only constant entity between in both waking and dream sleep is the conscious self that's viewing them. This exercise is meant to show that you're not this body or mind as you know it now, but you're just a witness of that. Another analogy that's given, which is kind of interesting, you can think of the soul something like the canvas that artists paint on, and then the different art that comes on the canvas, like our different bodies and minds, mentalities. So that may change but the canvases stays the same. Just like here on Houston Street, they have this huge thing across the street from Whole Foods. Is it this huge? The Bowery, on the Bowery, right? This huge thing, and they keep changing the painting. Like what is it, like once a month or something? Maybe once every 2 weeks. There's always like a new painting there. So I guess they employ like street artists and so on to do a new painting every time. But the same wall is staying there, but new paintings are coming. So you can think of the soul in some sense like that wall, that unchanging kutasta. Krishna said, kutarsta akshara uchite. Kutasta means whose position is not changing. And then the soul is the experiencer of all these different experiences of the mind and the ego and the different bodies and so on. But he's the unchanging entity. So he's a knower of his particular body and mind. And the super soul is a knower of all the bodies and mind. That is the difference between the two. So you know your field of activity, but you don't know mine. Well, you know to some degree the external stuff, but you don't know what's going on in here, luckily. So, but super soul knows. And there are many statements in the Upanishads. Prabhupada references them in the 2:11 through 30 section, which also talks about the distinction between matter and spirit. Prabhupada brings up several verses from the Upanishad that compares the soul and super soul to two birds. And the commentaries of this section also brings up some of these verses, where the soul is one type of bird that's trying, two birds that are existing in the tree of the material body. So the material body is compared to a tree, and there are two birds in that tree. One is a soul and one is a super soul. So the soul is, wow, is that what is that, like a dragonfly or something? The soul is trying to enjoy the fruits of that tree. Sometimes bitter fruits, sometimes nice fruits, right? Trying to enjoy. And the super soul is just looking at that enjoying soul, enjoying or suffering the sweet and bitter fruits of the body, right? Just like you have the body, you try to enjoy this body. For example, you may think, oh, I look good, and you want to enjoy that. Oh, I have money, you want to enjoy that. I have health, I want to enjoy that. And then also you have suffering situations. You meet with some accident and you don't look as good anymore. Or there's some disease comes or something, you suffer. So the soul is trying to enjoy its suffering in his body, and the super soul is just looking. And when the individual soul turns towards the super soul, he can finish his material existence. There are many verses like this. So this is what we learn about Kshetra and Kshetragya. So Kshetra means this body, or this material world also is called the field of activity. And the field, just like when children, well, you could say like this, when parents take their children to a playground, so each playground may have its like parameters. So similarly, the different bodies have different parameters. You have insect body, fish body, mammal body that sets a particular parameter or delimiters around consciousness depending on the body that they have. And within those parameters, they try to enjoy the body. And the super soul is just watching all the souls in all these different bodies. That's the difference between the two. Simple. Obviously, it goes into a little bit more details in the commentaries, but basically, you understand? Why is this important? I was at a cafe yesterday with my friend, and this Asian couple or business partner, they sat next to us, started just talking to us. And then they were asking, well, what do you do, each of us? And I said, I teach. And it was the Asian lady said, why is philosophy important? Like, what is the use of, she said, what is the use of yoga philosophy? It was a good question. I explained the best way I could, and she accepted my answer. Well, why is this important to understand the distinction between Kshetra and Kshetragya?
Knowledge comes from understanding that you're not the field, you're actually, you're Kshetragya, you're not the field.
Yes. So, yeah, why is that important to know that? Yes.
Well, it helps us to begin consciousness of Krishna as the supreme being, and we're more or less like we're trying to enjoy the
Yes.
activities of the body.
Yes.
whereas Krishna is a real majority. And I guess I'll just end by saying it's high time that we realize that,
Yes.
that we're not actually the enjoyer, but Krishna is.
Yes.
Very important.
When I talked to this Asian lady yesterday, she asked me, why is yoga philosophy important? So I said, everyone has a philosophy, either examined or unexamined. But everyone is following some philosophy. They've either examined it or they haven't, but some philosophy is there. So I said, usually the unexamined philosophy is the same for everyone. That by getting things I'll enjoy. That is a basic philosophy of everyone. So you can see that people live their philosophy, their unexamined philosophy. They chase after things and they try for enjoyment, isn't it? You're also doing the same thing. I'm also doing the same thing. Whether it's drugs or it's relationships or it's movies or whatever it may be, then you're trying for things to enjoy. That's the unexamined philosophy. Although we have tried for this, we're not getting happiness, but rather suffering is coming more and more. So then when you suffer, you start to examine your philosophy. And then you realize that I need a better philosophy to follow. And then what is it that will actually give fulfillment? So I said this, for this reason, philosophy is important. For starters, it's unavoidable. You have a philosophy already. Either you've examined it or you haven't. And basically for the Bhagavad-Gita or these Vedanta traditions, all suffering is due to what? The Kshetra Gya identifying with the Kshetra. That's where the suffering begins. So if you don't know this distinction, you have to suffer. In the same way that if a person thinks that they are Martin Luther King Jr., the great orator, civil rights leader, and they begin performing activities from that false identity, then a problem has to be there, isn't it? Suppose you think I am Martin Luther King Jr., then problem. Problem for you and problem for us also, isn't it? So everyone is walking around like this, actually crazy. Everyone. Now there's socially acceptable insanity. So that is basically what's going on now. It is socially acceptable to think that you're your body. So that's the socially acceptable insanity. But suffering is due to this only. So that's why this is important. Otherwise you have to suffer. It is. Okay, Danielle is saying, I've heard that analogy before of the soul and the super soul being two birds, and I love it. Where in chapter 2 does Prabhupada speak of this? You can see in the purport to 2. I don't remember, maybe 2:11 or 2:12. I'll look it up. Nityo Nityanand. I'll have to look it up actually. I don't remember the verse number. I'll look it up and get back to you. Okay. Next question, what is Jnana and what is Gaya? What is Gyan?
Knowing what's real and what's not.
Knowing what's real and what's not. Yes, anything else?
Knowing that we are not this body.
Yeah, that's definitely there. But from what Krishna is saying in Bhagavad-Gita. Yes, you remember those traits, 8 through 12. What does knowledge start with?
Knowing that you're not the body.
True. Well, in Krishna's presentation of the topic in this chapter, what does knowledge start with? Yes, humility, amanitvam, right? And then he mentions 20 items which he considers to be knowledge, which includes knowing the difference between the soul and the body and so on. What's interesting about that section is that knowledge is not like knowing evolution theory, knowing periodic table, knowing chemistry and all these things. But knowledge for Krishna means a kind of conceptual orientation of life, how you view the world, and a way of being, like a way of being or a way of living. So you may have PhD in this and that, but if you live like a rascal, you're considered as ignorant. That's why when you become devotee, you don't appreciate hardly anyone anymore. In terms of the conventional devotees, people say, have you read so-and-so's book? And we're like, no. Have you read this one? No. Have you heard this podcast? That podcast? No. They're hard to appreciate because everyone is basically, from Bhagavad-Gita standard, considered to be in ignorance. They don't know about amanitvam, humility, pridelessness, non-violence, Hardly. And what to speak of dedication to God, Acharya Upasana, surrender to the Guru. They don't know all these things. So they basically subject to being ignorance. We reject them. You understand? So that sometimes I have some friends who are not devotees or yogis. They're always asking me to read this book, read that book. Or they ask me, have you read this book? No. Have you read that book? No. Have you read this one? No. Have you heard of this? No. Have you? So one friend asked me, he said, do you read any books outside of your own, like traditional, like your own thing? And I said, no. And he said, you're sectarian. I said, I could live with that. Basically, of course, I gave some maybe politically correct answer. I said I don't have time to read other things, which is actually true. The wealth of knowledge available in this tradition is so much that you don't even get time for that, which is a genuine point. But the other reason is because everyone else is accepted to be in ignorance, according to Bhagavad-Gita. So why should I hear from them?
Well, also, it's a matter of knowing that the other literature really doesn't hit the spot well.
Yes.
Because of the fact that, to me, the humility is excellent. And,
Yeah.
thank you for bringing that out. But at the same time, what we're getting towards, I think, is that the body is not the person,
Right.
not the soul.
Right.
It's the Atma and power.
Yes. That's a very nice
You
point.
know that, so.
Yeah, that's a very nice point.
Yeah.
Even if you have something nice to say, but you're saying it from the reference point of a crazy person, so therefore you are rejected on principle. Just like even if a crazy person says something to you that may be even meaningful, but you do not accept because he is a crazy person, isn't it? Just like here in East Village, you see so many crazy people walking around. So suppose that a crazy person comes and says something to you that's also like even nice, but you reject on principle because they're crazy, isn't it? You may just go, to try to get out of the situation as quickly as possible, isn't it? So even if someone is very smart, sharing something very nice, but they're doing it from the reference point of thinking that there's something that they're not. So on principle, they're rejected. Of course, we don't say this in the public classes. It sounds so harsh and like, not bhakti. But this is, Bhagavad-Gita is saying like this. So what is Gaya? This one was a little bit more tricky. So this is knowledge. Yeah, that starts with humility. So what is Gaya? Gaya means the object of knowledge. Yes, in short. Yes, so it was that section, verses 13 through 18. It was basically talking about the qualities of a transcendent reality. So different words were used. Brahman was used, Parameshwar was used. His eyes is everywhere, his ears are everywhere, describing the Paramatma feature. The origin of light being. Anyway, many qualities were mentioned there. So, but essentially, it is the absolute reality, known as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Very good. Verse 19 is an interesting transition verse. Krishna says that only his devotee can know these things properly and thus attain a nature like his own, which is interesting that he just like kind of puts that in there. Because it makes me think about, well, what about others who aren't his devotees? But anyway. So what is Purusha and what is Prakriti? Those last 6 questions, last pair of questions. So what is Purusha and what is Prakriti? Now remember?
Purusha is the eternal spirit.
Yes, Purusha is the soul also. So these terms are used interchangeably. Kshetra, Kshetra Purusha, Prakriti. They're referring to basically the same entity, but Krishna just switches the discussion slightly. But it's the same entities. Purusha is the soul, and Prakriti is nature. Yes. There's another Purusha also. Adi Purusha. Who is the Adi Purusha? Yeah, Govinda. Hari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Hari Purusha is the Paramatma. Right? So in verse 23. So just like there was two Kshetra, right? So also there are two Purushas. One Purusha referring to the ordinary soul, another Purusha referring to the super soul. Now in 13:22, which is a very important verse because it kind of is a seed verse for chapter 14, the one Purusha soul is entangled in Prakriti. Now let's look at verse 22. I haven't looked at the verse in a while. It's a very nice verse. Yes, Purusha Prakriti Stohi. So the Purusha is Prakriti sta. He is standing in Prakriti. What is he trying to do? Standing in Bhakti. He's trying to enjoy. Understand? You are standing in Prakriti. Prakriti means what? Nature. Prakriti means his body, right? The product of nature also. So your soul is inside his body, and what is the soul trying to do in his body? Enjoy. Bhakti. Yes. Bhakti, enjoy what? Prakriti Janguna. The things that are born from the gunas. Chocolate. Netflix. Computer, iPhone, nice clothes, a partner. Isn't it? What is your name?
Jay.
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 Jay. I have the same name as you. So you're also trying to enjoy, isn't it? Yes. You also?
Yes.
So there's also, me also. We're all standing in Prakriti, trying to enjoy the products of Prakriti. So what is the result? Karanam guna sangasya sarasa yonijamasu. So why are we trying to enjoy these gunas of Prakriti? The cause is guna sangha. So guna sangha means due to association with the gunas. Sangha means like to associate. So the soul is associating with these gunas. So due to that association is causing the soul to want to enjoy the world of gunas. There's another word we use. Sadhu sangha is also there, right? Sadhu sangha means the association of saintly persons, right? And there's another term is used there also, Isha sangha. And how much sadhu sangha do you do? Okay, a little bit here and there. And how much Isha sangha? A little bit here and there, but less than the sadhu sangha. So you hardly do any Isha sangha, you hardly do any sadhu sangha, but you do guna sangha nonstop. Because we're in the world of guna, so it's unavoidable. So sometimes you associate deeply with motor ignorance. Motor ignorance is like, hell, yo, what's up, sis? How you doing? You're like, what's up? Associate sometimes motor passion. Motor goodness is hardly coming around, but sometimes you may do a little association of that. And due to the association of gunas, sarasa yoni jamasu, the self is meaning with good and evil, Prabhupada's translation, meaning with good and evil in different species of life. So you have the particular body you have now because of a certain type of guna sangha. And whatever guna sangha you're doing now, that will determine the type of body you'll get in another life, future life. And you can't get out of this guna sangha unless you do sadhu sangha and isha sangha. You understand? The sadhu sangha has to be more and isha sangha has to be more. Then you can cut the sangha with the gunas. Nirmana moha jitta sangha dosha. Krishna will speak about this later in chapter 15. Otherwise trapped. Okay, very good. Krishna mentions 4 sadhanas. Did you catch that? In verses 25 and 26, he mentions 4 sadhanas for coming out of this, for realizing this knowledge that he just talked about. Kshetra, Kshetragya, Prakriti, Purusha. Do you catch those sadhanas? 4 of them were mentioned.
Meditation,
Yes.
placing knowledge,
Yes.
working with that desire.
Yes.
And then which are things.
Yes. Particularly 13:26 is a very nice verse. I really like this verse. Again, there are those who are not conversant in spiritual knowledge. Anye tvevam ajanata. Ajanata, they don't know anything. Shutva nebhya upasate. But they begin to worship the Lord by hearing about him from others. So te api chati tarantyeva mrityun shruti parayana. They too cross over samsara because of their dedication to hearing. Shruti parayana. This is a very important verse. I just want to read the comment to hear that Prabhupada says is very nice. He said this verse is particularly applicable to modern society because in modern society, there's practically no education in spiritual matters. Some of the people may appear to be atheistic or agnostic or philosophical, but actually there's no knowledge of philosophy. Everyone's basically just enjoying their senses like animals. There's no, like, sometimes they may speak something fancy, but anyone who actually knows anything doesn't take, it's like children babbling. You know, sometimes the children come in and parents like, So similarly, these people come, they speaking big things, and the voice They don't know anything. They're just into sense gratification. It's like sometimes we call people like Mayavadis, but that's being very gracious. They're not Mayavadis also. They just say something that sounds impersonal. We call them impersonalists, but they're not impersonalists. But basically, everyone's just enjoying their senses like animals. And they come up with some minor reasoning of why they're doing what they're doing to enjoy. So as for the common man, if he is a good soul, there's a chance for advancement by hearing. This hearing process is very important. Lord Chaitanya, who preached Krishna consciousness in the modern world, gave great stress to hearing. Because if the common man simply hears from authoritative sources, he can progress. Especially according to Lord Chaitanya, if he hears the transcendental vibration, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. It is stated, therefore, that all men should take advantage of hearing from realized souls and gradually become able to understand everything. Very nice. The last section is what the seers, those who have realized these things, what do they see? So there are several elaborations there, but we'll stop there. Any final questions here? We got a sense of the chapter, no? We got a sense of the flow of the chapter. Now it's just a matter of going deeper. Yeah.
I missed one of the fourth sadhanas. I got meditation, cultivation of knowledge,
Jnana.
and worshiping.
Yes. There was one working without fruit of desires. Working without fruit of desires. Karma yoga. I have to go and check the commentaries. Okay, you got a sense of chapter today? General gist?
It says that everything that you do is actually me doing too.
Where is that? I don't remember that.
I think verse 30, or maybe that's how I read it.
Yes. Yes. Let me see. $13.30. This is chapter 2. We're at 13. Yeah. You're looking at 13:30? 13:30. One who can see that all activities are performed by the body. One who can see that all activities are performed by the body, which is created of material nature, and sees itself thus nothing actually sees. I don't know how you read that. So Krishna says a similar statement to this in chapter 3, verse 27. Pakritihi kriyamanani, this is a famous verse. Gunai karmani sarvashaha, ahankara vimudatma karta ahamiti manyate. So the soul be fooled by false ego, ahankara vimudatma, thinks himself, or you can say herself, as the agent of activities that are carried out by nature. So this particular verse is saying nature is actually the agent of acts in this world. And that the soul, one who can see that the soul is actually not doing anything, but that nature is actually doing everything in this world, then such a person actually sees. Another verse very similar to this idea in the Bhagavad-Gita is chapter 5, verses 8 and 9, where Krishna is talking about the tattvavit. This is the second place where Krishna talks about the tattvavit means one who knows the truth. the knower of the truth. So he says, a person in divine consciousness, that's how it's translated, the Tattvavid, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping, and breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all, because while speaking, evacuating, receiving, or opening or closing his eyes, he always knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects and that he is aloof from them. So basically, such a person is like watching it's like having a lucid dream. So you can see all the things happening in the dream, but you know that you're completely apart from that. So this is the idea of this particular verse. That, yeah, now you move your arm, you think, I am doing this. But here it's saying that the soul is actually just a witness of the movement. The actual movement of the arm is being done by nature. And consciousness is just witnessing that. Later on, this particular topic of who is the agent will get a little bit fleshed out by Krishna in that chapter 18, and where he mentions 5 factors of agency in this world. But yeah, this verse is not precisely saying that God is doing through. Of course, that could be a devotional. Sometimes the devotees would describe like that. Krishna is using. It's like the other day we were on Harinam, and then this one kid in Washington Square Park, he just basically like his sadhana, he just goes around the park like dancing like the whole time. Looks a little crazy, but he just goes around like dancing. He'll come right up to people and just be like right in front of them, you know. So he's a little bit off. So one of our guys, I've been telling him that he thinks he's better than everybody. Which is true for most everyone, but I've been getting on his case about it. So he kind of looked at this guy, and for some reason, this guy got in his face. Why are you looking at me like that? Why are you making fun? You know, now everyone's looking at you, looking kind of like crazy. But somehow or other, he like zoomed in on this particular devotee and was like, "Why are you looking at me like that?" And it's like getting in his face, like they were about to like rumble. And then this devotee kind of like was dismissing him, like, just go ahead on. And he's like, no, you shouldn't disrespect me. You shouldn't look at me this way. And we were like in the middle of kirtan while this was happening. Finally, the guy went away. And he like shook his like, are we cool? Like, don't disrespect me. We cool? So then he went away. And after he went away, I said, that was Krishna chastising you for thinking that you're better than him. And then he said, that's not Krishna, that was a rascal. I said, that was Krishna working through a rascal to chastise you because you think you're better than him. You were making fun of him, you think you're better, so Krishna working through him came and chastised you. So sometimes devotees, we will say stuff like this. Krishna is working through someone. But Krishna is aloof, also the soul is also aloof. Like this. So sometimes we may say that. Okay, do you feel you got something from this chapter, you're understanding? Now you can go back and look at these sections and go deeper. Now that you have the general skeleton or outline of the chapter, now you go deeper into it and see what are all these elements of the Kshetra? Yeah, what are all these different aspects? How is the Purusha entangled in Prakriti? How does he get out? Now you can see that it is very easy flow of the chapter. This one is at least. Okay, we'll stop there. Hari Om Tat Sat, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hari. 1326 offers hope for us all. Yes, indeed. Oh, one other thing. This, Danielle, before you go, I'll just share that verse. It's chapter 2. No, it's not this one. That was Dvavima Purusha. What is it? I think 17, 18. I'll look for it. Okay, I thought it was in this one. All right, I have to send it later. I thought it was in this one. I can't find it. I'll send later. I have to look it up. I'll send it later. I'll send it later, Danielle. Hari Om Tat Sat online. Hare Krishna. Yeah.